The coffee was one sip from killing him. Cole Mercer, a Navy SEAL who'd survived 2 combat deployments, almost died in a roadside diner. Not from a bullet, but from a cup of coffee someone had paid to poison. He never saw it coming. But a homeless girl did. She burst through that door barefoot, screaming 3 words that stopped his heart. "Don't drink it!" What she knew, and what Cole was about to uncover, would expose a network so dangerous they'd already silenced anyone who got too close. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe God still sends angels in disguise, subscribe and stay until the end. Cole Mercer lifted the mug and breathed in the steam. Bitter. Familiar. The only thing left in his life that didn't ask questions or expect answers. 30 years old. 8 years as a Navy SEAL. 2 deployments that took pieces of him he'd never get back. A wife who stopped waiting somewhere around month 14 of his second tour. A shoulder that healed wrong, and a discharge paper that said, "honorable," like it was supposed to mean something when the uniform came off. He still wore it. The Navy working uniform, NWU Type 3. Digital camouflage in forest green and brown, because he'd come straight from the base after signing his separation papers. The uniform still fit. Everything else didn't. Under the table, Ghost lay stretched along the floor, his thick tan and black coat pressing against Cole's boot. 5 years old, German Shepherd. Retired military working dog with a blast injury that took the hearing in his left ear. Cole had adopted him through a veteran canine program because the paperwork said Ghost was unadoptable due to behavioral issues. Cole understood behavioral issues. They got along fine. Ghost didn't beg. He didn't whine. He watched. His dark eyes tracked every movement in that diner, with a kind of focus that made strangers uncomfortable. His nose worked constantly, cataloging, sorting, filing away every scent like evidence. Cole trusted that nose more than he trusted most people. He brought the mug closer to his lips. The door exploded open. Cold air hit first, sharp, biting, unwelcome. Then she came through it like something had chased her out of the dark and into the only light she could find. She couldn't have been more than 19. Barefoot, coat hanging off her thin frame, torn at the sleeve, stained with dirt and something darker. Her dark hair was tangled, pulled back with a rubber band that had already lost the fight. Her face was pale beneath grime, cheekbones too sharp, eyes too wide, and burning with a fear that hadn't yet turned into panic. It was worse than panic. It was certainty. "Don't drink!" she screamed, and the sound cracked through the diner like a gunshot. "Don't touch it!" Everything stopped. A fork clattered against a plate. Someone cursed softly near the register. The woman behind the counter, Sarah, according to the faded name tag pinned crooked on her apron, froze with a coffee pot suspended in midair, her mouth open, her tired eyes suddenly very awake. Ghost was on his feet before Cole's brain caught up. Not barking, not lunging. A low, vibrating growl rolled out of his chest like thunder building underground. His body shifted, placing himself between Cole and the table. His nose lifted, his nostrils flared wide, and then he did something Cole had only seen him do twice before, both times in situations where people almost died. Ghost lunged at the mug. He knocked it hard with his snout, sending it spinning off the table. Coffee exploded across the tile, steaming, spreading, pooling against the baseboard. Ghost recoiled immediately. He sneezed once, sharp and violent. Then he growled at the puddle like it was a living thing. Cole was already standing. His chair scraped back so hard it nearly tipped. His hand dropped to Ghost's collar. Instinct, not thought. His other hand came up, open, steady, the way he'd been trained to approach unknown threats without escalating them. The girl stumbled forward, and grabbed the edge of his table like it was the last solid thing in the world. Her knuckles were white. Her whole body shook. Not from cold. From running. From days of running on nothing. Her eyes locked onto the spilled coffee. "Please," she whispered, voice raw and broken. "Tell me you didn't." "I didn't," Cole said. His voice came out calm, practiced. The voice he'd used in rooms where one wrong word meant someone didn't walk out. "You stopped me." Her knees gave out. Cole caught her before she hit the floor, one arm bracing her shoulders, the other cradling her head. She weighed almost nothing, just bones and exhaustion wrapped in a coat that smelled like wet concrete and sleepless nights. "I'm Cole," he said, lowering her gently to the booth seat. "You're safe. What's your name?" Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Her eyes rolled, fluttered, then focused again with desperate effort. "Maya," she said. "Maya Dawson." "Maya, stay with me. Who did this?" "They were laughing," she whispered, and her voice carried the hollowness of someone repeating a sound they couldn't stop hearing. "Two men. Behind the diner. 2 nights ago. They said your name." Cole's blood went cold. Not figuratively. He felt the temperature drop in his veins like someone had opened a valve. "They said the seal asking questions. One of them, he smelled sweet, burnt sugar, like candy that's been on a stove too long, and metal. He wore gloves. He touched a cup. Your cup." "Call 911, Cole said to Sarah, his voice sharp now, carrying the authority he thought he'd left on the other side of a discharge paper. Sarah fumbled for the phone, hand shaking so badly she nearly dropped it twice. Ghost hadn't moved from his position. He stood rigid, ears locked forward, body coiled, his damaged ear tilted slightly, compensating. His eyes weren't on Maya. They were fixed on the corridor that led to the diner's back exit. Cole followed Ghost's gaze. A man was leaving. Not running. Walking. The kind of walk that said he'd already calculated every variable and decided the outcome was in his favor. Tall, lean, charcoal jacket that cost more than anything in this diner, including the diner. Dark hair slicked back with precision. Beard trimmed to a razor line. As he pushed through the side door, his sleeve rode up. Cole saw it. A trident tattoo on the inside of his wrist. Not military. Cole knew every SEAL trident ever inked. This was something else. An affiliation. A signature. The man glanced back once. Their eyes met for less than a second. The man's expression didn't change. It didn't need to. It said everything. You were supposed to be dead by now. Then he was gone. Sirens built in the distance. Maya grabbed Cole's wrist with a grip that surprised him, desperate and fierce. "He said something else," she whispered, pulling Cole closer. "He said the morning would end early, that it would look like nothing, just a tired man who had a heart attack over breakfast." Cole's jaw tightened until his teeth ached. He knew that language. Clean kills. Deniable outcomes. The kind of planning that came from people who'd done this before and would do it again, because no one had ever stopped them. "How long have you been on the street?" Cole asked her. 2 years. No shame in it, just fact. "And you heard them talking. Where?" "Behind this diner, the loading dock. Warm air comes out of the vent at night. I sleep there sometimes when it's cold enough to kill you." Cole looked down at Ghost. The dog's growl had settled into something quieter, a low, continuous vibration that said the threat had left the room, but hadn't left the situation. Ghost's nose was still working, pulling scent from the air like he was reading a document no one else could see. "Maya," Cole said carefully. Do you have family? Her face changed. The fear that had been focused and sharp suddenly cracked open into something worse. Raw, unguarded terror. My grandmother, she said. Ruth. She's all I have. She lives near the rail yard in the subsidized apartment. I check on her when I can, but I can't stay because they watch places like that. Shelters, housing. They watch where scared people go. Who watches? Maya's eyes darted to the spilled coffee, then to the back corridor where the man had disappeared. The same people who put that in your cup. The paramedics arrived. Two of them, a woman named Lisa with sun-weathered skin and a braid that looked regulation tight, and the younger man who moved too fast and talked too little. They assessed Maya quickly. Dehydration, exhaustion, malnutrition. No drugs, no alcohol. Just a body that had been running on fear for too long. She needs fluids and rest, Lisa said to Cole, then looked at Ghost. Dog's good. Trained? Retired military, Cole said. Lisa nodded like that explained everything. You riding with her? Yes. They loaded Maya into the ambulance. Cole climbed in beside her, Ghost pressing against his leg in the confined space. As the doors closed, Cole pulled out his phone. Old, screen cracked from a drop he couldn't remember, but functional. He scrolled to a contact he hadn't used in 14 months. A name he'd saved after a joint military-civilian investigation that had gone sideways but ended right. Detective Nora Vega. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was exactly the way he remembered it. Sharp, controlled, and carrying the faint edge of someone who'd been expecting bad news all day and was tired of being right. Cole Mercer, she said. I was wondering when you'd stop pretending civilian life was going to work for you. Someone tried to poison me this morning, Cole said. Coffee. At a roadside diner. A homeless girl heard them planning it and stopped me. Silence. 1 beat. 2. You okay? I am, because she wasn't afraid to scream in a room full of strangers. Where are you now? En route to Ridgefield General with the girl. She's in bad shape. Not from poison. From surviving. Another pause. Cole heard a pen tapping. Nora's habit when her mind was moving faster than the conversation. The food supply complaint you filed before separation, Nora said. The falsified inspections. You know about that? Cole, I've been tracking that network for 7 months. Contaminated products moving through military contracts, school lunch programs, hospital food services. Every time we get close to evidence, it vanishes. Witnesses go quiet. Inspectors recant. She paused. 2 people have died, ruled natural causes. They weren't. Cole closed his eyes. The ambulance rocked gently as it turned a corner. Ghost shifted his weight, pressing harder against Cole's leg, grounding him. The man who walked out of that diner had a trident tattoo on his wrist, Cole said. Nora's breath caught. Barely audible, but Cole heard it. Describe him. Early 40s, tall, lean, charcoal jacket, tailored. Dark hair slicked back, beard trimmed to a line. Moved like someone who's never been caught and doesn't believe he can be. Dominic Hale, Nora said, and the name landed like a stone dropped into still water. He's their fixer. Cleans evidence. Cleans people. We've never been able to place him at a scene. She paused. Until now. Maya stirred on the stretcher, eyes fluttering open. She looked at Cole with a clarity that cut through the exhaustion. There's more, she said quietly. I didn't just hear them that night. I've been hearing things for 2 years, behind diners, warehouses, loading docks. I know where they take the shipments. I know which building hums at night near the tracks. And I know the blue door they use when they think nobody's watching. Cole stared at her. This girl, 19 years old, barefoot, starving, invisible to every system that should have protected her, had been mapping a criminal network from the shadows simply because survival had taught her to listen. "Maya," Cole said, "everything you know. Can you show us?" She held his gaze, her chin lifted, not with pride, but with something harder. Resolve. "I can show you everything," she said. "But you have to promise me one thing." "Name it." "My grandmother. Whatever happens, you keep her safe." Ghost pressed his nose against Maya's hand. She flinched, then softened, her fingers curling into his fur. A sound escaped her. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. Something in between that sounded like the first safe breath she'd taken in 2 years. "I promise," Cole said, and he meant it, the way only a man who'd broken too many promises could mean a new one, with everything he had left. The hospital smelled like bleach and waiting. Cole sat outside Maya's treatment room on a plastic chair that groaned every time he shifted his weight. Ghost lay at his feet, head up, ears tracking every footstep that passed. Neither of them was good at sitting still. They did it anyway. Lisa came out first. She looked at Cole the way medics looked at people they weren't sure about yet, measuring, calculating, deciding whether honesty was worth the trouble. "She hasn't eaten in 3 days," Lisa said flatly. "Her body's been running on adrenaline and fear. There's bruising on her wrists. Not fresh. Old. Repeated. Someone's grabbed her before. More than once." Cole's hands tightened in his lap. "She say who?" "She didn't have to. Girls like her don't get bruises from accidents. They get them from people who think nobody's watching." Lisa paused. "She asked for you twice while we were working on her. Wouldn't let go of the dog's name. Kept saying, 'Ghost won't let them in.'" Something shifted in Cole's chest. Not pain, something heavier. Responsibility. He stood and walked into the room. Maya was propped against thin pillows, an IV line running into her left arm. She looked smaller now, younger. The kind of young that made Cole's stomach turn because the world had clearly decided she was old enough to suffer. "They're coming," Maya said before he could speak. No greeting, no preamble, just the raw truth of someone who'd learned that small talk was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Who's coming?" "Everyone. When that man walked out of the diner, he wasn't running. He was reporting. By now they know I warned you. By now they know I'm here." She swallowed hard. "And by now they're figuring out how to make sure I don't talk again." Ghost moved to the side of her bed and pressed his nose against her hand. Maya's fingers curled into his fur, anchoring herself. "You said your grandmother lives near the rail yard," Cole said, pulling a chair close. "Ruth Dawson, 72, apartment 4B in the Greenfield subsidized building. She raised me after my parents died. Car accident when I was 6. Maya's voice flattened, the way voices do when the facts are so familiar they've lost their edges. "I aged out of foster care at 18. Couldn't keep a job long enough to afford rent. Started sleeping outside. But I always checked on her, every Tuesday and Friday. She'd leave soup on the windowsill when she knew I was coming." "Does she know where you sleep?" "No, and she can't know. If they find out she matters to me—" Maya stopped, her jaw clenched. "She's all I have, Cole. She's the only person in the world who still says my name like it means something." Cole's phone buzzed. Nora. "I'm 15 minutes out," Nora said. "Don't let that girl sleep until I get there." Everything she knows, every sound, every smell, every face she's ever seen near that loading dock. I need it tonight. Because, Cole, if Dominic Hale is involved, We're not dealing with some local racket. This is organized, multi-state, and they don't leave witnesses." "She's not a witness," Cole said, keeping his voice low. "She's a target." "Same thing to these people." Nora arrived exactly when she said she would. She walked into the hospital room the way she walked into every room, eyes first, scanning corners and exits before her body fully committed to entering. She was tall, wiry, with close-cropped dark hair and a scar pulling at the left corner of her eyebrow that she never explained and no one asked about twice. She looked at Maya for a long moment, then at Cole, then at Ghost, who hadn't moved from Maya's side. "Start from the beginning," Nora said, sitting down. "Not today. The real beginning. When did you first hear something you knew was wrong?" Maya closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were steadier than Cole expected. 8 months ago, behind a warehouse near the rail yard. I was sleeping against the back wall because the vent pushes warm air out at night. A truck came around 2 a.m. No headlights. 2 men unloaded boxes. Plain brown, no labels. One of them opened a box and checked something inside. He said, "Labels go on at the facility. These ship clean by Thursday." "What kind of boxes?" "Food. Packaged food. I could smell it. Processed. Sealed. Like what you'd see in a school cafeteria or a hospital tray." Nora's pen stopped moving. "You're sure about that?" "I ate out of dumpsters behind 3 different schools for 6 months, Maya said, and the words carried no self-pity, only precision. "I know what institutional food smells like." Nora leaned forward. "How many times after that?" "Dozens. Different trucks, different nights, always between 1 and 4 in the morning. Always the same warehouse. Blue door, narrow windows, hums at night because they run refrigeration units inside." Maya paused. 3 weeks ago, I saw something different. A man came who wasn't like the others. He wore a suit. Expensive. The workers changed when he showed up. Stood straighter, talked less. He checked every box himself. And when he was done, he looked right at the spot where I was hiding. Cole felt Ghost tense against his leg. "Did he see you?" "I don't know. I stopped breathing. He stared for maybe 10 seconds. Then he smiled, not at me, at nothing, and walked away. That's when I started sleeping somewhere else." Her voice dropped. "But 2 nights ago, I came back to the diner's loading dock because it was 15 below and I was going to freeze. That's when I heard them talking about you." Nora exchanged a glance with Cole, the kind of glance that carried the weight of every case that had almost broken, but didn't because one detail fell into place at the last second. "The man in the suit," Nora said carefully. "Was that Dominic Hale? The man who left the diner today?" "Same walk," Maya said immediately. "Same smell. Expensive cologne and something underneath it. Chemical. Sharp. Like a room that's been cleaned too hard." Nora stood and moved to the hallway. Cole followed, leaving Ghost pressed against Maya's side like a living shield. "She's mapped their entire operation without knowing it," Nora said, her voice barely above a whisper. 8 months of patterns, schedules, locations. Cole, this is more than we've gathered in 7 months of federal surveillance. "She's also 19, malnourished, and terrified," Cole said. "And she just painted a target on herself by saving my life in front of a room full of people." Nora's jaw tightened. "I know." "So what do we do?" "We move fast. I'll set up a safe location for her tonight, somewhere off the grid. And I need you to—" Cole's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered on instinct, then wished he hadn't. Silence on the other end. Then a sound. Someone breathing slowly, deliberately. The way you breathe when you want the person listening to know you're in no hurry. A click. Then nothing. Cole stared at the phone. They have my number. Nora grabbed his arm. Since when? I don't know. But that wasn't a wrong number. That was a message. They moved back into Maya's room. She took one look at Cole's face and sat up straighter, wincing against the IV. What happened? We need to move you tonight, Cole said. Nora's going to... No. Maya's voice cut sharp. Not until someone checks on my grandmother. Right now. Tonight. If they know about me, they'll go after her first. That's what people like this do. They don't come for you. They come for the person you'd die for. The words hit Cole in a place he thought he'd armored over years ago. He looked at Nora. Send someone to Ruth's apartment, he said. Now. Nora made the call. 12 minutes of silence that felt like 12 hours. Cole stood by the window. Ghost positioned himself at the door. Maya gripped the bedsheet so hard her knuckles went white. Nora's phone rang. She answered, listened, and Cole watched her face change. Not dramatically. Nora wasn't built for drama. But something behind her eyes shifted, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. When? Nora said into the phone. Then, how long ago? Then, secure the building. I'm on my way. She hung up and looked at Maya. Your grandmother's apartment is empty. Door was unlocked. No signs of forced entry. Her coat is still on the hook. Her medication is still on the counter. Her shoes are by the door. Maya didn't scream. She didn't cry. She folded in on herself, silently, completely, the way people collapse when the one thing holding them together is suddenly gone. Ghost pushed his head into her lap, pressing hard, whining softly for the first time since Cole had known him. They took her, Maya whispered. Because of me. They took her because they think fear is a weapon, Cole said, kneeling beside the bed. He took Maya's hands. They were ice cold and trembling. Listen to me. They want you to go silent. They want me to back off. That's what this is. Leverage. It means she's alive, Maya. Dead hostages don't buy silence. Living ones do. Maya looked up at him. Tears cut tracks through the grime still on her face. But her eyes were not broken. They were furious. Then what do we do? Cole stood. He looked at Nora. He looked at Ghost, who had risen to his feet, ears locked forward, body coiled, every muscle ready. We don't chase, Cole said. We let them believe they've won. I go back to that diner tomorrow morning. Same seat. Same coffee. Same routine. They need to think the fear landed. And me? Maya asked. You do what you've been doing for 2 years, Cole said. You watch. You listen. You remember. But this time, you're not alone. Nora nodded slowly. I'll have a team on the rail yard warehouse by midnight. Observation only. No moves until we have Ruth's location confirmed. Maya wiped her face with the back of her hand. I can tell you exactly where they'll take her. There's a room behind the blue door. Concrete floor. No windows. They keep it cold because the refrigeration unit runs through the wall. I've heard sounds from that room before. At night, when everything else was quiet. I thought it was machinery. She paused. Her voice broke on the next word. It wasn't machinery. Cole reached down and rested his hand on Ghost's head. The dog's fur was warm, steady, real. The only anchor in a night that had just gotten infinitely darker. Tomorrow morning, Cole said, we start. And somewhere across town, in a building with a blue door that nobody was supposed to notice, an old woman with silver hair sat in the dark and prayed that the granddaughter she'd raised to be brave had been brave enough to run. Cole walked into the diner the next morning at exactly 7:15. Same door, same booth, same order. He sat down, placed his hands flat on the table, and waited for the coffee he had no intention of drinking. Ghost settled at his feet, stretched out along the warm patch near the baseboard. To anyone watching, the dog looked half asleep. Ears soft, breathing slow, body loose. But Cole knew better. Ghost's nostrils were working. Every scent in that room was being sorted, filed, and measured against the ones that mattered. 3 days had passed since Maya's warning. 3 days of routine. 3 days of sitting in this booth and lifting a mug and setting it down untouched, while the people who wanted him dead watched him do it. Today was different. Today, everything was in place. Cole just had to sit still long enough to let the trap close. Sarah came over with the pot. Her hand shook slightly as she poured. She'd been shaking since that first morning, though she tried to hide it. 25 years behind this counter, and the worst thing she'd ever dealt with was a grease fire and a customer who threw a plate. Now she poured coffee for a man someone had tried to kill in her diner. And she did it because stopping felt more dangerous than continuing. "You sure you don't want cream?" she asked. The same question she asked every morning, because the routine was the only thing keeping her upright. "I'm good, Sarah." She lingered. "Cole." He looked up. Her eyes were wet, and she was blinking hard against it. "Whatever's happening," she whispered, "just be careful. Please." "I will." She nodded once and walked away. Cole watched her go and felt the familiar ache of a man who kept dragging decent people into dangerous places just by existing. Near the soda machine, Caleb wiped the same surface for the 4th time. Late 20s, shaved head, pale skin pulled tight over sharp cheekbones. The diner uniform hung on him wrong. Too stiff, too new, like a costume he hadn't rehearsed enough. He moved with the nervous energy of someone counting down to something. Cole didn't look at him directly. He watched the reflection in the window instead. Caleb kept rubbing his left wrist, the spot where a partially removed tattoo left a shadow that soap couldn't reach. An anchor. Faded, but not gone. Caleb wasn't here to serve coffee. He was here to confirm that Cole was still predictable. Still sitting. Still vulnerable. Good. Let him confirm it. Across town, Maya sat in the back seat of Nora's sedan, knees pressed together, hands balled in her lap. She wore the same borrowed sweater, pale blue, too big, and her dark hair was tied back with an elastic Sarah had given her. She looked cleaner than she had in months. She didn't feel cleaner. She felt like a wire stretched so tight the next vibration would snap it. "You don't have to do this," Nora said from the driver's seat, watching her in the rearview mirror. "Yes, I do." "Maya, we can handle the extraction without you being present. You've given us enough." Maya met Nora's eyes in the mirror. "That man hid something in the diner, above the ceiling tiles behind the counter. I watched him do it 3 weeks ago through the back window when I was looking for food in the dumpster. He reached up, slid something in, and walked out like it was nothing. Whatever's on that drive is why people are dying, and he's going to come back for it. Today." Nora's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "How do you know today?" "Because yesterday his man inside the diner, the bald one, checked the ceiling 3 times when he thought nobody was watching. He's preparing. The pickup is soon." Nora picked up her phone and called Cole. "She says today. He's coming for the drive." Cole's voice came back flat, controlled. "I know. Caleb can't stop touching the ceiling with his eyes. He's been looking up every 90 seconds. I have 2 agents outside, one in the alley, one across the street. When Hale retrieves the drive, we move." No, Cole said. Not until it's in his hand. If we move early, it's circumstantial. We need possession. Nora paused. That's a risk. Everything today is a risk. The morning crawled. Customers came and went. Cole lifted his mug twice, breathed in the steam, set it down. Ghost tracked every door opening with one ear and every footstep with the other. Caleb cleaned surfaces that were already clean and checked his phone under the counter when he thought no one was watching. At 9:47, the back door opened. Cole felt it before he saw it, a shift in the room's energy, subtle as a change in air pressure. Ghost's head came up, not fast, deliberately. His body went from loose to locked in the space of a single heartbeat. Dominic Hale walked in like he owned the building. Charcoal jacket, dark hair slicked back, beard trimmed to a surgical line. He moved through the kitchen corridor and into the front with the smooth, unhurried confidence of a man who had never been caught and had stopped believing it was possible. He smiled at Sarah. It was a smile that hit every technical mark of politeness and carried absolutely nothing behind it. "Morning," he said. "Health inspection follow-up." Sarah stiffened. She glanced at Cole, a flicker, barely a tenth of a second, then looked away. "Of course," she said, stepping aside. Dominic moved behind the counter. His eyes swept upward. One quick check, casual, the kind of glance that would mean nothing to anyone who wasn't looking for it. Cole was looking for it. Dominic reached up and hooked his fingers along the edge of a ceiling tile. Dust drifted down like pale snow. From the narrow space above, he pulled out a small silver USB drive, compact, matte-finished, heavier than it looked. He turned it once, checking for damage. Then his hand moved toward his jacket pocket. "Don't touch it!" Maya's voice cut through the diner like a blade through fabric. Clean, sharp, final. She stood near the front door, pale but steady. Her borrowed sweater hung past her wrists. Her dark eyes locked onto the USB drive in Dominic's hand with the intensity of someone who understood exactly what that small piece of metal meant. "You hid it above you," she said, her voice carrying across the silent room. "3 weeks ago, through the back window. I saw everything." The room stopped breathing. A customer near the register set down his fork without realizing it. Sarah pressed her back against the wall, hands over her mouth. Dominic's mask cracked. Not much, just a fracture at the corners of his eyes, a tightening of his jaw that revealed the machinery beneath the polish. He looked at Maya the way a man looks at a problem he thought he'd already solved. "Who are you?" he said. The politeness was gone. What remained was cold, efficient, and very, very dangerous. "The girl who sleeps behind your dumpster," Maya said. "The one nobody ever sees." Dominic's eyes flicked to Cole. Recognition landed like a slap. The seal, alive, sitting 10 feet away. And the girl who'd warned him was standing at the door, calling out every move. He moved fast. The USB went into his fist. He spun toward the back exit, shoulder-checking Caleb out of the way. Caleb stumbled, hit the counter, and went down without a sound. A man who'd been waiting for a moment that had just blown past him. "Stop," Cole said, standing. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It carried the weight of a man who'd spoken that word in rooms where compliance wasn't optional. Dominic didn't stop. He hit the back door at full speed, shoes pounding concrete as he burst into the alley. Cole followed. His stride was long, controlled, deliberate. Not the wild sprint of panic, but the measured pursuit of someone who'd chased men through places far worse than this. Ghost passed him in 3 seconds. The German Shepherd moved like a dark streak, 70 pounds of muscle and training, and 5 years of knowing exactly when the moment demanded everything. His damaged ear didn't matter. His nose didn't matter. His eyes locked onto the man running ahead, and his body did the rest. Dominic vaulted a low fence. He was fast, athletic, practiced, the kind of runner who'd done this before. He hit the strip mall parking lot beyond the alley and kept going. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out the USB drive. His arm cocked back. He hurled it toward the storm drain at the edge of the lot. A perfect arc, metal glinting in the morning light, spinning toward the black grate and the darkness beneath it. "Ghost!" Cole shouted. The command wasn't a word. It was a key turning a lock that had been waiting to open. Ghost changed direction mid-stride, not toward Dominic, toward the glint of metal skittering across the asphalt. His claws scraped sparks. His body lowered, stretched, every muscle firing in the kind of explosive effort that had been bred and trained and tested in places where failure meant body bags. His jaws snapped shut around the USB drive, 2 inches before it dropped into the drain. He skidded to a stop, braced against the pavement, legs locked, body trembling with adrenaline and purpose. The drive was clamped between his teeth like a prize he'd rather dive and release. Cole reached him in 4 strides. He dropped to his knees and cupped Ghost's face in both hands. The dog's eyes were wild with intensity, his breath coming in sharp bursts, but he held perfectly still. "Good boy," Cole whispered, and his voice cracked on the second word, broke open in a way he hadn't allowed in years. So good, buddy." He pried the drive gently from Ghost's mouth. The metal was warm, scratched from the asphalt, but intact. Sirens screamed in the distance. Dominic glanced back once from the far edge of the lot. His face was twisted, not with fear, but with the blind fury of a man watching his untouchable life come apart because of a homeless girl and a dog. He disappeared between 2 buildings. Nora's car screeched into the lot 30 seconds later. She was out before the engine died, 2 officers flanking her, moving with the tight, efficient urgency of people who knew exactly how small the window was. Cole held up the USB drive. Nora took it, turned it in her fingers, weighed it like she could feel the truth pressing against the casing. "This is it," she said quietly. "This will unravel everything." "He ran," Cole said. "He won't get far. I've got units on every road out of Ridgefield." She looked at Cole, really looked at him, the way she had the first time they'd worked together, when she'd decided he was one of the rare ones who could be trusted. "You held it together." "Ghost held it together," Cole said, running his hand on the dog's back. Ghost leaned into him, panting, tail wagging once, a single thump against the asphalt that said, "I did my job." Inside the diner, Maya stood exactly where she'd been. She hadn't moved. Her hands were shaking. Her face was white, but she was upright. Sarah had come out from behind the counter and was standing next to her, one arm around Maya's thin shoulders, holding her the way mothers hold children after nightmares. Firmly, completely, as if the strength could transfer through touch. Caleb sat on the floor against the counter, head in his hands. He wasn't trying to run. He wasn't trying to explain. He was sitting in the rubble of whatever lie he'd been telling himself to justify standing on the wrong side of this. Nora walked up to him. "You have one chance," she said. "One. Tell me where they're holding Ruth Dawson." Caleb looked up. His eyes were red. His lip trembled. "I didn't want any of this," he said. "I owed money. They said it was just watching, just reporting. I didn't know about the poison. I didn't know about the old woman." "Where is she, Caleb?" "The warehouse. Blue door. There's a room in the back, past the refrigeration unit. Concrete walls. They keep it locked from outside." His voice broke. "She was crying when they brought her in. I heard it through the phone. She kept saying a name. Maya. over and over. Maya made a sound, not a scream, not a sob, something deeper than both. A sound that came from the place where love and terror lived so close together they shared a heartbeat. Cole caught her before she fell. Ghost pressed against her legs, whining softly, his warm body holding her steady when nothing else could. "We have her location," Nora said, already on her phone. "I'm mobilizing a team now. Tactical entry. 30 minutes. Cole looked at Nora. "I'm going." "Cole?" "I made her a promise." He looked down at Maya. "I promised her grandmother would be safe. I'm not breaking another promise. Not this one." Nora studied him for 2 seconds. Then she nodded. "You stay behind the entry team. You're not armed and you're not law enforcement." "I don't need to be either of those things," Cole said. "I just need to be the man who walks into that room and tells Ruth Dawson her granddaughter sent me." Ghost stood at attention, ears locked forward, body coiled, eyes burning with the singular focus of a dog who understood, in whatever wordless way dogs understand the things that matter most, that the mission wasn't over. Maya gripped Cole's sleeve. "Bring her home," she whispered. "Please, bring her home." Cole put his hand over hers. "I'll bring her home." And he meant it with every broken, rebuilt, still standing piece of himself. They moved in 22 minutes. Cole rode in the back of Nora's sedan, Ghost pressed against his leg, both of them silent in the way that only comes before the kind of moment you either survive or don't. The tactical team was already staged 2 blocks from the rail yard when they arrived. 4 agents in plain vehicles, radio chatter kept to clipped whispers. Nora parked and turned to Cole. "You stay behind the entry team until the building is cleared. That's not a request." "Understood." "I mean it, Cole. You're a civilian now. Whatever instincts are screaming at you in there, you let my people work." Cole met her eyes. "I'll stay behind your team, but the second that room is clear, I'm walking in. Ruth needs to see a face that isn't holding a weapon." Nora held his gaze for a beat. Then she nodded. "Ghost stays with you. On leash. He won't need a leash." They approached from the east side, using the row of abandoned warehouses as cover. Cole's boots hit the cracked asphalt without sound. 8 years of training didn't disappear because someone handed you a discharge paper. Ghost moved at his heel, ears forward, nose working the air with the relentless focus of a dog who had done this in places where the stakes were measured in lives. The blue door was exactly where Maya said it would be. Paint peeling, hinges rusted, a padlock that looked newer than everything around it. The tactical lead, a square-jawed agent named Torres, who hadn't smiled once since Cole met him, signaled his team forward. 2 agents flanked the door. Torres held up 3 fingers. 2, 1. The ram hit the door with a sound like a thunderclap. The padlock shattered. The door caved inward, and the team poured through with the kind of speed and precision that Cole recognized in his bones. The choreography of people who trained for moments exactly like this. "Federal agents, show your hands!" Cole waited. Ghost waited. Every second stretched like wire pulled to its breaking point. Voices echoed from inside. Commands. Compliance. The sharp crack of a secondary door being breached. Then Torres's voice on the radio, clipped and certain. "Building clear. 1 occupant. Back room. Alive." Cole moved before the last word faded. Through the blue door, past stacked crates that smelled of chemicals and processed food, down a narrow corridor where the hum of refrigeration units vibrated through the concrete walls and into his chest. Ghost led him. Not because he needed direction. Maya had described every turn, but because Ghost's nose had found what it was looking for. The dog pulled forward with a purpose Cole hadn't seen since their active duty days. Head low, shoulders driving, following a scent trail that led to a steel door standing open at the end of the corridor. Cole stepped through. Ruth Dawson sat on a metal chair in the corner of a small concrete room. She was wrapped in a thin coat that was too large for her, silver hair falling loose from a bun that had given up holding together days ago. Her hands, bent with arthritis, trembling from cold and fear, were clasped in her lap as if she were praying. Maybe she had been. She looked up when Cole entered. Her eyes were red, swollen, exhausted. But behind the exhaustion was something that hadn't broken. Something that 72 years of hard living and harder loving had forged into steel. "Are you the one Maya sent?" she whispered. Cole knelt in front of her. Slowly, the way you approach someone who's been sitting in the dark, waiting to find out if the world still has good people in it. "She sent herself," he said. "I just followed." Ruth's face crumpled. Not with sadness, with relief so immense it couldn't hold its shape. A sob tore out of her, raw and jagged, the sound of a woman who had spent days telling herself to be strong, finally allowing herself to stop. Ghost moved forward and pressed his nose into Ruth's hands. She flinched, then looked down at the dog's warm brown eyes, and broke open completely. Her fingers sank into his fur, and she held on like he was the first living thing that had touched her with gentleness since they'd taken her. "She's alive?" Ruth asked, her voice shaking. "My Maya? She's alive?" "She's alive," Cole said. "She's safe, and she's waiting for you." Ruth closed her eyes and whispered something Cole couldn't hear. A prayer, maybe. A name. Maybe both. The paramedics came in behind them. They checked Ruth's vitals. Dehydrated, hypothermic, blood pressure dangerously low, but no injuries beyond the ones that fear and cold had carved. They wrapped her in a thermal blanket and helped her to her feet. She grabbed Cole's arm as they walked out. Her grip was stronger than he expected. "They told me nobody was looking," Ruth said. "Every day they came in and told me she'd forgotten about me, that nobody was coming, that I should stop saying her name." Cole's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. "They lied. She never stopped fighting for you. Not for 1 second." "I know," Ruth said, and something fierce flashed behind her tears. "I raised that girl. I know exactly what she's made of." They loaded Ruth into an ambulance. Cole rode with her, Ghost at his feet, and called Nora from the back. "Ruth is safe," he said. "Shaken, dehydrated, but whole." "Good," Nora said, "because the USB just finished decryption, and Cole, it's worse than we thought." "How much worse?" 3 states, 14 distribution points, military bases, hospital systems, school lunch programs, all of them receiving contaminated products with falsified clearance certificates. We've got names, dates, payment records, and internal communications going back 2 years. She paused. There are 2 deaths in those files, both listed as natural causes, both tied directly to products that passed through Dominic Hale's pipeline. Cole looked at Ruth, who had closed her eyes, Ghost's head resting on her lap. 2 people dead, thousands more at risk. Children eating poisoned food in school cafeterias. Veterans consuming contaminated rations on military bases. Hospital patients weakened by the very supplies meant to help them recover. And the only reason any of it had surfaced was because a 19-year-old girl who slept behind dumpsters had the courage to scream in a room full of strangers. "What about Dominic?" Cole asked. "Picked up 40 minutes ago at a private airfield outside of Harrisonburg. He had a bag packed and a charter flight booked to Montreal. The pilot called it in. Said his passenger was sweating through a $2,000 jacket and kept checking his phone. He ran. He ran. And he's done running. Nora's voice carried something Cole hadn't heard from her before. Satisfaction. Not the gloating kind. The quiet, earned kind that comes from watching years of patient work finally close around the right throat. We're executing warrants on 6 locations tonight. 3 inspectors, 2 distributors, a logistics manager, and Hale himself. By morning, this network won't exist. And Caleb? Cooperating fully. He was in debt. Gambling. Medical bills for a sick mother. They recruited him through the debt. Told him it was just surveillance. Watch the diner. Report on your movements. He says he didn't know about the poison until after it happened. Do you believe him? Nora was quiet for a moment. I believe he's a scared kid who made a terrible choice and is now terrified of what it cost. Whether that's enough, that's for a judge to decide. The ambulance pulled into Ridgefield General. Cole helped Ruth down. She was steadier now, the thermal blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Ghost walking beside her as if he'd been assigned to her personally and took the assignment seriously. They brought Ruth through the emergency entrance and into a private room. A nurse started fluids. Another brought warm broth that Ruth held in both hands, breathing in the steam like it was the first real thing she'd smelled in days. And then the door opened. Maya stood in the doorway. She'd been pacing the hospital corridor for an hour. Nora's agent said she hadn't sat down once, hadn't eaten, hadn't done anything except walk back and forth and ask every person who came through the door if there was news. Now she stood still, completely still, staring at her grandmother, as if she needed to verify with every sense she had that Ruth was real and present and breathing. "Grandma," she said. Just that. One word. And it carried everything. 2 years of sleeping outside, of checking windows on Tuesdays and Fridays, of eating from dumpsters and hiding from shadows, and never once forgetting whose soup waited on the windowsill. Ruth looked up. Her face shattered and rebuilt itself in the space of a single breath. "My brave girl," she whispered. "My brave, brave girl." Maya crossed the room in 3 steps and collapsed into Ruth's arms. Ruth caught her. 72 years old, arthritic hands, trembling body. She caught her granddaughter like she weighed nothing, because love has its own physics that ignores everything the body can't do. They held each other. Maya's shoulders heaved with sobs she'd been storing for days. Ruth pressed her face into Maya's hair and whispered words that weren't meant for anyone else. The private language of a grandmother who had raised a child alone and never once let go. Cole stepped back into the hallway. Ghost followed, pressing against his leg. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Something was happening inside his chest. Something warm and enormous and completely unfamiliar. It wasn't the adrenaline fading. It wasn't relief. It was something he'd stopped believing he was capable of feeling after the divorce, after the discharge, after the long months of sleeping in his truck with Ghost and wondering if the best parts of his life had already happened. It was purpose. Not the sharp, mission-driven purpose of a SEAL deployment. Something quieter, deeper. The purpose that comes from standing between vulnerable people and the things that want to destroy them. Not because someone ordered you to, but because you chose it. His phone buzzed. A text from Nora. They want you. Supply chain oversight. Training. Someone who knows what to look for and won't look away. Interested? Cole stared at the screen. He thought about the diner, the coffee he'd never drunk, the mornings spent sitting alone with a dog and a routine that kept him alive, but didn't give him a reason to be. He typed back, When do I start? The reply came in 3 seconds. Yesterday. Cole almost smiled. Almost. He looked down at Ghost, who sat at his feet with his ears up and his tail still, watching Cole's face the way he always did. Reading him, measuring him, waiting to see what came next. "We got a job," Cole said quietly. Ghost's tail thumped once against the hospital floor. Once was enough. Inside the room, Maya pulled back from Ruth's arms and wiped her face with both hands. She looked at her grandmother. Really looked, taking inventory of every line, every bruise, every piece of silver hair that had come loose. "They told me you forgot," Ruth said softly. "They said you ran and didn't look back." Maya shook her head. "I look back every single day. I just couldn't let them see me do it." Ruth cupped Maya's face in both hands. Her arthritic fingers were gentle, impossibly gentle, against her granddaughter's cheeks. "You saved a stranger's life, Maya. You walked into that diner with nothing. No shoes, no food, no one. And you saved a man you'd never met." "I had to," Maya whispered. "I know," Ruth said. "That's exactly how I raised you." And in the hallway, standing beside a German shepherd who had once been called unadoptable, Cole Mercer let himself believe, for the first time in longer than he could remember, that the best part of his life hadn't already happened. It was just beginning. 1 week later, Cole Mercer walked into the diner at 7 in the morning and did something he hadn't done since a barefoot girl screamed 3 words that changed everything. He drank the coffee. He lifted the mug, brought it to his lips, and swallowed. It tasted bitter, ordinary, safe. And for a man who'd spent the last 7 days questioning every surface, every hand that touched his food, every stranger who stood too close, ordinary was the closest thing to holy he'd ever tasted. Ghost lay at his feet in the patch of warmth beneath the table. His coat caught the light, tan and black, the silver just beginning to show at the edges of his muzzle. 5 years old, but looking like a dog who'd lived 3 lifetimes and made peace with all of them. His tail thumped once against the floor when Cole set down the mug. Once was enough. It always had been. Sarah stood behind the counter, and for the first time in a week, her hands weren't shaking. She'd pinned her auburn hair back neatly. She'd put flowers on the counter. Yellow ones, small and imperfect, probably from the gas station down the road, but they were there. She'd never done that before. She brought Cole a refill without being asked. "You actually drank it," she said. "I did." "How was it?" "Terrible, same as always." Sarah laughed. It was short and startled and real. The laugh of a woman who'd forgotten what it sounded like and was surprised to find it still worked. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and walked away before either of them could make it into something bigger than it needed to be. The door opened. Maya stepped inside, and Cole barely recognized her. She wore a clean dress, pale pink, simple, slightly worn at the hem. Sarah had pressed it into her hands 2 days ago, insisting she take it, refusing to hear no. Maya's dark hair was brushed and pulled back loosely, curls escaping no matter how carefully she tried to tame them. She looked younger like this. She also looked like someone who had decided, very recently, that she was allowed to exist in a room without apologizing for it. She hesitated near the door. Her hands were clasped in front of her, fingers laced tight, the only visible remnant of the girl who'd been sleeping behind dumpsters a week ago. "Is it okay?" she asked. Cole smiled. Small. Honest. The kind of smile that cost him something because he'd been rationing them for years. "It's your table now, too." Maya slid into the seat across from him. Her feet swung slightly above the floor. She was shorter than the booth was built for, and the detail made her look impossibly young. Ghost opened one eye, regarded her with the solemn evaluation of a dog, deciding whether someone deserved his attention, then thumped his tail twice and settled his chin back on his paws. Maya's shoulders dropped. The tension she'd been carrying since she ran barefoot into this diner finally loosened. Not all of it, maybe not even most of it, but enough. "Nora called me this morning," she said. "And?" "They finished. Every thread. 14 distribution points shut down. 3 inspectors arrested. 2 distributors. The logistics manager broke down an interrogation and gave up 6 more names they didn't even have yet." Maya paused. Dominic Hale was denied bail. The judge said he was a flight risk after the airfield thing. His lawyer argued for house arrest. The judge looked him in the eye and said, "You ran once. You don't get the chance to run again." Cole nodded. He didn't need details. Nora wouldn't have called Maya unless it was finished, truly finished, and Nora didn't use words she hadn't earned. "The 2 people who died," Maya said, quieter now. "The ones in the files. A man in Norfolk and a woman in Roanoke. Both ate food that came through Dominic's pipeline. Both had their deaths ruled natural." She swallowed. "Nora said the families are being notified. She said the cases are being reopened." "Good." "She said it happened because of what I saw, what I heard. She said 8 months of sleeping behind warehouses and listening through walls gave them more than 7 months of federal surveillance." Cole looked at her. "She's right." Maya's eyes shimmered. She blinked hard, fighting it. "I didn't do it on purpose. I wasn't gathering evidence. I was just trying not to freeze to death." "Sometimes that's enough," Cole said. "Sometimes just surviving in the right place at the right time is the bravest thing anyone can do." The door chimed again. Ruth Dawson walked in slowly, carefully, as if she were testing each step before committing to the next one. She was small and stooped, silver hair pulled into a bun that was already losing its battle with gravity. Her fingers were bent with arthritis, her skin weathered by decades of work that never paid enough, and her eyes, sharp, bright, fierce with the kind of love that doesn't dim no matter what the world throws at it. Maya was out of the booth before Cole could blink. She crossed the diner in 3 steps and wrapped her arms around Ruth's waist with a force that made the older woman gasp, then laugh, then hold on with both hands pressed flat against Maya's back. "I'm here," Ruth whispered. "I'm right here." "I know," Maya said into her grandmother's shoulder. "I know." They stood like that for a long time, long enough for Sarah to wipe her eyes twice behind the counter. Long enough for a customer near the register to look away and pretend he wasn't crying. Long enough for Ghost to lift his head, ears forward, watching the reunion with the quiet, dignified attention of a dog who understood that some moments were too important to sleep through. Ruth and Maya sat down across from Cole. Sarah brought coffee and a plate of toast and set them on the table with trembling hands. "On the house," Sarah said. Her voice cracked on the second word. She turned away fast and busied herself with a pot that didn't need refilling. Ruth wrapped both hands around the warm mug. She looked at Cole with eyes that held no pretense, no performance, just the unvarnished gratitude of a woman who had sat in a dark room for 3 days, believing she would die there. "They told me every day that nobody was coming," Ruth said. "That Maya had forgotten. That I was alone." She lifted the mug and took a sip. "I didn't believe them, not once, because I know my granddaughter, and I know what I taught her." "What did you teach her?" Cole asked. Ruth looked at Maya. "That when you see someone about to be hurt and you can stop it, you stop it. Even if you're scared, even if you're hungry, even if you're barefoot and nobody in the world knows your name. Maya reached across the table and took Ruth's hand. The old woman's fingers closed around hers with a grip that arthritis couldn't weaken because love was holding the bones together. The door opened one more time. Nora walked in without ceremony. Same plain jacket, same cropped dark hair, same scar pulling at her eyebrow. But something was different today. The skepticism that usually sharpened her expression had softened, just slightly, just enough to let something warmer through. She stopped at Cole's table and looked around at the three of them, then at Ghost, who wagged his tail once in acknowledgement. "They're done," Nora said. "Every thread pulled, every name accounted for." "And the schools?" Cole asked. "The hospitals? The bases?" "Emergency recalls went out yesterday. Every product traced to Dominic's network is being pulled. The FDA is coordinating with military procurement. It'll take weeks to fully clean the pipeline, but the source is shut down." She paused. "Permanently." "What happens to Caleb?" Maya asked. Nora considered this. "He cooperated fully, gave us access to every communication, every instruction he received. His mother's medical bills were what they used to pull him in. She's been fighting cancer for 2 years, and insurance stopped covering treatment." She exhaled. "He made a terrible choice, but he also made the right one when it mattered. That'll carry weight with the judge." Maya nodded slowly. Cole watched her face and saw something he recognized. The complicated mercy of someone who understood what desperation could drive a person to, because she'd lived inside it herself. Nora reached into her jacket and pulled out a folded paper. She set it on the table in front of Maya. "Housing assistance application," Nora said. "Approved this morning. 2-bedroom apartment, subsidized, safe, new locks, monitoring system, paid for through the Victims Assistance Fund." She looked at Ruth. "Both of you." Ruth's hand flew to her mouth. Maya stared at the paper like it might disappear if she touched it. "There's more," Nora said, turning to Maya. "GED program at the community college. Starts next month. Full scholarship through a grant for displaced youth. If you want it." Maya picked up the paper. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear this time. From something she'd stopped allowing herself to feel, because hoping for things had always cost too much. "Why?" Maya whispered. "Why are they doing this?" Nora looked at her with an expression that Cole had never seen on the detective's face before. Something raw and real and human underneath all the professional armor. "Because you walked into a room full of strangers with nothing. No shoes, no money, no name anyone recognized. And you saved a man's life because it was the right thing to do. And because the people processing this paperwork read your statement, and every single one of them wanted to make sure that the girl who had the courage to scream, 'Don't drink,' in a room where nobody knew her, didn't go back to sleeping behind a dumpster." Maya pressed the paper against her chest and closed her eyes. A tear ran down her cheek. Ruth pulled her close, pressing her lips to Maya's temple. Nora stayed only long enough to finish half a cup of coffee. She stood, buttoned her jacket, and looked at Cole one last time. "You did good, Mercer." "I sat in a booth and drank coffee." "You sat in a booth while someone was trying to kill you, and you didn't flinch. That's not nothing." She nodded once, to Cole, then to Maya, then to Ghost. "Take care of each other." She left the way she'd come. No ceremony, no wasted motion. The door closed behind her, and the diner settled back into its rhythm, like a heartbeat finding its resting pace. Later that morning, Cole walked Ghost outside while Maya and Ruth finished breakfast. The air was cold and clean, and carried the promise of a day that wouldn't demand anything terrible. He leaned against the hood of his old pickup. Ghost sniffed the sidewalk with professional interest, cataloging the neighborhood the way he cataloged everything. Thoroughly, patiently, as if the world owed him a full report. Cole's phone buzzed. Nora's text from last night, still open. Supply chain oversight. Training. Someone who knows what to look for and won't look away. He'd already said yes. He'd start Monday. The pay wasn't much, but it was steady, and it came with something no paycheck could buy. A reason to get up in the morning that had nothing to do with routine, and everything to do with making sure what happened in this diner never happened to anyone else. The door opened behind him. Maya and Ruth stepped out together. Ruth held Maya's arm with one hand and a paper bag of leftover toast in the other. Sarah had insisted, and Ruth had learned decades ago, that arguing with a woman who'd spent 30 years behind a counter was a waste of everyone's time. Maya stopped beside Cole. She looked at him with those dark, steady eyes that had seen too much and still chose to look. "Thank you," she said. Just that. 2 words. But she said them the way people say things, when the words have to carry the weight of everything language can't reach. The barefoot run, the scream, the hospital, the warehouse, the dark room, the reunion. All of it compressed into 2 syllables that vibrated with everything behind them. "You saved me first," Cole said. Maya almost smiled. "Ghost saved you. I just yelled." Cole looked down at Ghost, who sat between them with his ears up and his tail still, watching them both with the patient, knowing gaze of a dog who had done his job and was ready to do it again whenever the world required it. "Yeah," Cole said. "He's good at that." Ruth reached for Cole's hand. Her grip was warm, and the tremor in her fingers had nothing to do with weakness. "God put you in that booth," she said softly. "And he put my Maya behind that diner. And he put this dog between you and that cup. Don't you ever tell me miracles don't happen on ordinary mornings." Cole looked at her, at Maya, at Ghost, at the diner glowing behind them, red and yellow against the winter light, no longer a crime scene or a trap or a memory of poison. Just a place where something extraordinary had started because an ordinary girl refused to stay silent. "No, ma'am," Cole said. "I won't." They walked away together as dusk began to settle. Cole and Ghost in front, Maya and Ruth behind, their steps unhurried, the evening opening ahead of them not as a threat, but as a road they were finally allowed to walk without looking over their shoulders. And in a small diner in Ridgefield, Virginia, Sarah wiped down the booth by the window and found a few bills Cole had left under his mug. Tucked beneath them was a napkin with 2 words written in careful, steady handwriting. "Thank you." She held it for a long moment. Then she pinned it to the corkboard behind the register, next to the specials menu, and a faded photograph of the diner on its opening day. It stayed there for years. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunder. They don't come wrapped in light or announced by angels. They arrive barefoot, breathless, and terrified, screaming 3 words in a room full of strangers because staying silent would have been easier. But silence was never what courage looked like. God works through cracked hands and empty stomachs, through dogs who refuse to look away, through tired men who choose to stand when sitting is safer, through 19-year-old girls who sleep behind dumpsters and still believe that a stranger's life is worth saving. You may never know how close you are to changing someone's fate. A moment of attention, a word spoken when every instinct says to stay quiet. The decision to care about someone the world has already forgotten. These are not small things. They are exactly how miracles begin. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to believe that courage still exists in ordinary people. Leave a comment, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe if you believe, as we do, that light will always be stronger than the darkness that tries to hide it. May God bless you. May He protect the ones you love. And may He remind you that even on the most ordinary morning, in the most unremarkable place, He is still working, through every quiet act of bravery the world almost missed.